Good morning. Welcome as we gather with each other in this season as we move towards the festival where we celebrate the great lights in our lives and in our season. Welcome as we create this circle with each other on this fresh morning, newly painted white, in this new week, in this new day. On this storied land that was traditional meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route for Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, Nakota Sioux peoples. Home to many First Nations and home to so many of us who have made our way to this land and to so many who are coming to this land. A generous land that has welcomed newcomers for generations. Welcome to this spiritual gathering, the home, the spiritual community of Southminster Steinhauer United Church. We each come in our essentialness, bringing all that we are, all that we've done, all that we haven't managed to do into this circle, being who we are, finding ourselves with one another wherever we are. As we come into the friendship of this circle, we hold space with one another, waiting for more light.
Hello. December, wow. Today marks our first Sunday in the season of Advent, a season that honors the 4 weeks leading to Christmas. We light this first candle of the season as we come to this morning with listening ears and listening hearts. We recognize that wisdom begins with listening, and our journey towards Christmas begins as we listen to the wisdom of the season, the wisdom of the ages, and the wisdom of our living. May this flame light our way as we begin this journey and this gathering together.
I'd like to invite us into a new song, a song that we'll sing a number of times through the season of Advent leading up to Christmas. We haven't yet sung this song as a community, so it's new to all of us. I want to invite us to sing just the chorus as we can hear the verses squeaked out by the composer. When we sing this song, I want us to recognize that in this season of Advent and Christmas, we celebrate it as a season of lights, and we share that with so many traditions and cultures around the world. And if there's one thing that can bring us together, it's the sense that we are all a light, and that the constant call to us as people on a spiritual journey that looks unique just to ourselves is that the journey of becoming a light is a lifelong one. So may we sing it as a sense of our commitment to always look to be the light in our world. Light through the clouds, shining in streams, each glowing beam dispersing its colors in us. Light with no bounds, streaming indulgently, one with its rays, reflections of amber flame. Burning in us is the light of the stars, their story and strength, they are ours. Dawn rises to smile in each new day, giving us hope along the way. To be the light. Yesterday's light kindled our past. Each day requires fresh light in birthing new things. Chasing the light drives our dependence, transforming life, inspires our emergence as light. Burning in us is the light of the stars, their story and strength, they are ours. Dawn rises to smile in us each day, giving us hope along the way. To be the light. Burning in us is the light of the stars, their story and strength, they are ours. Dawn rises to smile in each new day, giving us hope along the way.
Yes, thank you, Chris. When we gather, we strengthen our intention to live in ways that sing our highest values, that are our reflections of our deepest humanity. And so I invite us into these words that we offer prayerfully with one another. Into this time, we take our place to listen beyond our world of words, to hold a space for one another in the midst of our losses, to share what we have found to be true, to shoulder our burdens together, to find wisdom for the path before us, to pursue justice where walls shut out the light, to find peace where we are anxious. We pray as those seeking to listen deeply. May it be so.
Time for all ages, one and all, short or tall, come on up. We'll have a chat. Here we are. Do you know what? Allison and I won't bite. We can move forward on the carpet so that, well, unless I'm hungry.
I've seen it. I've seen
you
it
can
happen.
come up and sit on the carpet. Allison and I would like to talk to you about when we talk to each other, the conversations we have, and how we have to speak and then listen. Mm-hmm. So there's a few things that I think we need to have a good conversation.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have any ideas? What are some things we need to do or to have? Maybe Allison, do you have one idea to start things going? What do we need?
Yeah, I had this idea that it might be good to stand up and really show that you're here so people can really hear you very well. Don't you think so? What do you think, Chris? Does this help you to hear better?
I'm kind of scared.
No good up here?
I don't like that.
That's always happening. Hey, adults are always talking at you down like this. Okay, maybe that was too intimidating.
Yeah.
I'll try over here.
Okay.
How's it? Pardon? One more time? I can't hear you at all. Pardon? Sure, I'll try out here. No, no good.
Let's try something else. Maybe there's another way that Allison and I can talk, and maybe that'll be better. Allison, come up here. We'll try one more way.
Yeah, to really be heard.
Yeah. Hey, Allison, how's it going?
I don't know. Here, I'll give you,
Okay.
let you try it. How's the space here?
That feels really close.
Yeah. That's happened to you. There's always that one person who's just a little too close.
Hey, so I wonder, does anyone have any ideas? What could we do to make all of those things better? What would make all of that better? Do you have any ideas that could make us talk a little bit easier and better? What do you think? You have to read when you talk? Oh, interesting. Yes, well, that is one good way to talk, and you'd sure know what to say if you were reading. That's a good thought. Kara, did you have an idea?
Yeah, you just stand up like where you're sitting, but then you be like in a good distance.
A good distance? Yeah.
So, Kara and Allison, do you want to try that out?
Sure.
Kara, do you mind? Come stand up. Let's see if you know what you're talking about here. Sure. So,
Just stand. Yeah. Does this feel like a good distance?
Yes.
I think so too.
hey, that works.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kara. We were a long way away, so that was too far, right? When Allison was outside the door, it was kind of hard. What about when we were too close? Kara's idea is also great, right? You know, like maybe we just need to stand the right distance apart. Who knows what the right distance is? But do you think that we all can decide?
Absolutely. I think so. I think that we know what the right distance is. You can kind of feel it in your body. You can feel, oh, I don't like this. This is too close to hear what they're saying. They're in my space. Or this is too far. I don't feel close to this person with my words and my feelings. I think that I can feel it in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is when we're listening to each other and when we're talking to each other, that not only do we have to hear and listen and understand so that we have to be comfortable, but that also makes us feel safe if there's the right space there. If we create the right space, we can feel more comfortable and we can feel safer. And Allison, wouldn't you say it's really good and okay to make ourselves feel comfortable and safe?
Absolutely.
That's why
Yeah.
we back up, or that's why we come forward?
Really important. Yeah. You get to just take the space that you need that feels good. And then you'll be able to really hear that person, what they're saying. And they'll be able to really hear you.
So fantastic. When we are going home, when we are going to school, when we're with our friends, when we're with total strangers, it's important to know that we can be safe and we can be comfortable and we're in charge of that so that we can talk and listen in a good way. Okay? Thank you for coming up here and having fun with us. We're going to invite you to go to Kids Spirit.
This is from the writing of a woman by the name of Judy Brown in her piece entitled Fire. What makes a fire burn is the space between the logs, a breathing space. Too much of a good thing, too many logs packed in too tight can douse the flames almost as surely as a pail of water would. So building a fire requires attention to the spaces in between, as much as to the wood. When we're able to build open spaces in the same way we have learned to pile on the logs, then we can come to see how it is fuel and the absence of fuel together that make fire possible. We only need to lay a log lightly from time to time. A fire grows simply because the space is there, with openings in which the flame that knows just how it wants to burn can find its way. In the thoughts of this contemporary poet.
This is a story from the earliest gospel we have, Mark. It was written about 40 years after Jesus' death. Then he left the region of Tyre, went through Sidon, back to Galilee Lake, and over to the district of the 10 towns. Some people brought a man who could neither hear nor speak and asked Jesus to lay a healing hand on him. He took the man off by himself, put his fingers in the man's ears, and some spit on the man's tongue. Then Jesus looked up in prayer, groaned mightily, and commanded in Aramaic, "Emphatha," which means, "be opened." And it happened. The man's hearing was clear, and his speech plain. This is a story told to an early Jewish Jesus community.
I've often thought that on California freeways, you could take down all the existing current speed limit signs and all the signs that tell you how far it is to your destination, And they could all be replaced with one sign that just says, speed limit. As fast as possible. Distance to destination, as close to the other vehicle in front of you as possible. It's always kind of a bit of a cross-cultural experience for a prairie Canadian driver to drive on a California freeway. And I've never quite understood the resistance to allowing any space to open between vehicles. There's sort of an agreed upon convention among California drivers that you drive just as absolutely fast as you possibly can and you leave no space unfilled between you and the car in front of you. And should you fail to observe those unposted rules of the road, without fail, someone will cut you off and fill that gap. Because holding space is strictly prohibited. And sometimes those same rules of the road seem to apply to the conventions around conversation. That every gap gets filled with speaking. Because it's hard for us to just hold space with one another. The silence feels strange, maybe strained, maybe awkward. And so we often get ready to dart in even before the space opens because our thoughts have already raced ahead to figure out how we're going to fill that space when it does open. In 2011, a young college graduate walked out his door, the door of his home near Philadelphia, and he began an 11-month walk across the United States with this sign on his backpack that read, "Walking to listen." Andrew Forsthoefel had decided to dive straight into the eye of the storm of his uncertainty, of not knowing who he was, where he was going to go with his life, and so he began a 4,000-mile journey with 10,000 uncertainties. And as he reflected on his experience, this is some of what he said about it. In our cultural paradigm, he said, you're supposed to know the answers to questions, or at least pretend you know. We're supposed to have solutions to problems. In our paradigm, to say, I don't know, is a humiliating admission of failure. When I was walking, I began to see the absurdity of certainty, that it doesn't, in fact, exist. Because there's simply no knowing what will come next. I didn't know where I would sleep until I was there, sleeping. I couldn't know the truth about anyone until I was actually with them, asking questions and listening. Which isn't to say my mind wouldn't try its best to create an illusion of certainty by assuming it could know something about someone simply by looking at them. This is one of the costs of our addiction to certainty. If you don't know how to be in the openness of not knowing, we never get to actually find out who someone is, because instead we'll relate our imagined version of who they are, a projection really of ourselves and our judgments and our assumptions. He goes on to say he was a little horrified by the power of his addiction to certainty. One day when he was walking in North Carolina, he came across a road sign that said, "Inmates working." He said, I walked for 2 miles or so before I encountered them, and I was freaking out the whole way about what these bad men were going to do to me. When I came upon them, I saw that they were women, picking up trash. And we ended up walking together for a while, and I listened. One said, I'm getting out soon, only 3 more years. Another said, I'm getting out in a week. First thing I'm going to do is see my kids. Another said, first thing I'm going to do when I get out is be alone. There's 50 people to a room in prison. Ain't no business of yours, nobody doesn't know. When we reached the end of their section, one of the women shook my hand and she said, be careful out there. Not everyone's as nice as us. As Andrew walked, and those U.S. states passed beneath his feet, he began to find a kind of liberation in his uncertainty. By abiding in a state of, I don't know, he discovered a kind of vulnerability in that act of openness that for him was the beginning of humility, a humility that laid a real foundation for dialogue and encounter, the two things that build the house of understanding. And understanding is the host to that mysterious and sovereign visitor of the human experience, love. We've all walked long enough and far enough in our lives that we keep meeting that wisdom. It's the same wisdom that's folded into that quirky little first century story that Allison read for us a moment ago. A story that is a parable about Jesus, not a memory of him. With that string of seemingly silly but maybe symbolic acts, the story that has Jesus stick his fingers in the ears of a complete stranger and then spit on the tongue before he touches the guy's mouth, and then he looks up and he sighs. And then he speaks one simple but profound invitation when he says, be opened. Be opened to hear and to speak. Be opened to understand or seek understanding, to hold together what cannot be changed or to discover together what can be. To nurture the space of possibility and not smother the flame with the limitations of our own experiences or our own perceptions. A wise Jesuit priest said it this way: someday, after mastering winds, waves, tides, and gravity, we shall harness the energy of love. And for the second time in the history of the world, humanity will have discovered fire. Everything changed for our primal ancestors when they discovered the capacity to harness the power of fire. And if we were to discover the power of love, a love that listens deeply, that holds the spaces for possibility, then for the second time in our human history, we'll have discovered fire. Holding space is the invitation that Andrew Forstall answered with his feet. The invitation for fire to find its way between the logs. The invitation of a circle to receive and hold. The invitation of a spiritual community like ours to be changed by the spaces we hold with each other. Isn't holding space really the mandate of human community? For our ears to be opened to not only hear, but to listen. For our tongue to be free as our spirits are freed. To speak what really matters in that space we create with one another. And listening into that space is sometimes just as uncomfortable as having someone stick their fingers in your ears or put spit on your tongue. We feel the helplessness in holding space of not being able to change things for one another, but just to hold each other's pain. We feel the stretch of seeing the world through the eyes of another. We experience the limits of our knowing and the freedom in holding space of being in that place where we just say, I don't know. And while we hear through the little openings on the sides of our head, listening requires our whole being to be open. And maybe it's not only about opening a space with each other, but maybe it's about opening a space within us. Because sometimes our ears are open for business, for the business of hearing, but our hearts are closed to the business of listening. In this winter season, in this season when seeds are silently growing in the darkness, in this festive season, we gather around fires, we build a fire together, sometimes literally with friends and family, we sit around the fire, but other times, we build a fire of warmth by simply being with one another, holding a space together. As we begin this Advent journey, this is a time to ask ourselves what it would mean to hold space with one another in ways that would allow the flame of understanding, the flame of healing, the flame of possibility, to find its way in us and between us and with us. We grieve the death of Mary Peterson, she who was a mother, a grandmother, one who held space well, with a remarkable capacity to listen, a quiet woman, faithfully a part of this community, very involved in supporting the seniors' lunches along with Jackie and Ernie Borick for so many years. As we gather this week, we acknowledge Mary's death, her completed circle of life, and that we will gather in this place on December 15th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to celebrate her life. This morning, as we hold her and her family in our thoughts, we celebrate the gift of her life as we sing this refrain that we say so often at the close of every memorial service. And we affirm that we are held safe in the undying light of love.
We meet in the center, at our center table, which holds a space for each of us to be. We come to this table as a place to listen to life, to discover wisdom that lights our way in this season of darkness.
As households have done, as spiritual communities have done, as Jesus and his friends have done, as communities of friends and neighbors will always do, we share bread and a cup as a symbol of our quest for that which nourishes our bodies and our spirits.
We come to this table with our wonder for all that life is, to ponder what life requires of us and deepen our commitment to what is needed for life to flourish. No matter who you are, where you are on life's journey, no matter if you're a member of this church or any church, if you've been to this table countless times or never, you are welcome here. We hold this space for you and for all of us. We're invited to open ourselves to where our truest being and the world's deepest needs meet.
We invite you now to this table. For us, not a table of belief, but a table of belonging, where there is a place for you. Come and share bread for your journey and the cup of our common quest.
As we go today, may the sacred act of listening, may the act of loving our way and opening ourselves into the hearts and the needs of the world and each other be our goal. May we go from this place with spirits renewed, with energy to live the lives of the best and the most valuable living we can live. As we go from this place, may the spirit of love always go with us. Let's sing. Hey, it's Christopher. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch last week's video, click this button right here. If you can manage it and can donate to SSUC to help us continue this video page, click right here. And for any information that you want about SSUC and our programs, visit our website right